What is up, everybody, and welcome back for another Cinema 4D tutorial. Today we're going to be covering the Spline defector in Cinema 4D R19. So essentially what this Spline effector does is can do a couple things, but it can either set an object to a specific spline, like I have this circle spline here, and I have the cube set to the spline so that it only moves along the spline. And you can use this for animation purposes. You can use it for a bunch of stuff. There's parameters. You can rotate the object with it. You can do a bunch of stuff. And then the second version that you can do with this is you can use it inside of a cloner object for different splines. So we have this helix spline here, and we just use the cloner object in the spline deformer to place our disk objects all along the spline, following it, and you can add more, you can add less, you can do animations with them and everything. But it's just some simple little things that you can do inside of Cinema 4D that many people might not know. So we'll just hop in here. I'll just delete all this. So the first thing that we're going to do is choose an object. So let's say I wanted to use spheres. I like spheres. And so you can use the spline effector or the spline deformer, whatever you want to call it, in a couple different ways. So we'll cover the first one first, where you can attach a object to a spline. So if you come into the one with the pin, the splines, you can choose any one of these. For simple purposes, I'm just going to use the circle, and I'm just going to switch the plane to X and Z to make it lay flat, and I'm just going to make it about 400 centimeters in radius. So to connect our sphere to the spline, the first thing that we're going to need to do is get a spline deformer. So that's going to be under our MoGraph tab, under effectors, and we're going to come down to spline. So now that we have our spline deformer, our spline object, we're going to make it a child of our sphere by dragging and dropping it over it. Now, if we click on our spline deformer, you're going to notice that our sphere hasn't attached itself to the circle spline yet. Well, that's because you need to tell the deformer what to move the object to. So under the effectors tab, there's this little one here that says spline. So once you have your spline that you want to attach it to, just drag and drop that into this one here, and then it's going to say circle. So now that we do that, you still notice it hasn't moved our sphere. That's because if you come into the Deformer tab over here, the deformation is off. So if we set that to object, as soon as you click that, it snaps it right to the spline. And then if you come back into the effector, you can set the offset, you can set a start and end so that the offset only goes so far. Just a bunch of stuff for animation and stuff like that. In parameters, you can set rotation, and there's the position one there too. For the deformer, you can just leave it on object, because if you do point, it stretches the whole object out, and if you do polygon, it just kind of makes it a disaster. So just keep it on that. And fall off, you can, yeah, I don't know what you can do with that, but that's for something else. So I'll just go infinite so that no matter where it is, it goes to our spline. So that's pretty much a simple way that I did the first one with the spline deformer. And the second way that we did it is we kind of do the same thing. We grab an object. Let's say this time I want to grab platonics. And then I got to choose my spline. So let's say I wanted to do a helix again. So if I want to clone multiple different platonics onto this spline, it's pretty similar of a procedure. I'm just going to make this smaller because they will be cloned onto here, many of them. And I'm going to go under MoGraph and I'm going to grab a cloner. I'm going to drag our platonic into our cloner, and then I'm just going to set the Y to 0 and the Z to 50. And now you can see here we have 3 platonics going in a direction. I don't think you need to choose a direction. I'm just doing this because I like it on the Z-axis instead of the Y-axis. And obviously under the cloner tab, there's this one that says effectors. And if we come into MoGraph, effectors, we can drop the spline effector right into there. So now again, we just go back to the effector tab and we follow our steps from before. So we take our spline, drop it into the spline one, and it clones it to the spline. And then when we come back to the cloner, now is when we can up the amount of platonics we have on the spline. You can set the offset of your actual platonics, but it doesn't really change too much. So again, there's our rotation and scale and stuff. You can scale them down. The rotation doesn't do too much because it's not really affecting the ones attached to the spline. It's only affecting the actual one. The position doesn't do much. So the scaling works. We have our effectors. So you can just load this one up, or you can make it not. So that's another little thing that we can use this one for. You can also set, I don't think this matters in this instance, but the mode. There's an easy way, like let's say you were trying to clone multiple to the circle spline. Instead of going through all of the work, you can just have the cloner object and you can set it to a grid array and you have your circle. Just for save you guys work if you're trying to get this look. There are some things in the cloner object, like you can do the grid array. You can set the count, so you can make these rows, you can make these things like this. But yeah, so that's just some of the little things that you can do with the spline of Deformer inside of Cinema 4D. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you liked the video, leave a like, and I will see you guys all next time. See you guys.